Excellency Jessie Lapen, who is the head of the USAU mission in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Joining us from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa is Dr. Vera Songwei, who is the Executive Secretary of that commission, as well as the United Nations Under Secretary General. We will also be joined by a representative from Afreximbank and by a representative, Dr. Seth Barkley from COVAX. So that's our lineup for today. It will be a very exciting 1 hour with lots of information on vaccine acquisition and distribution in Africa. My name is Wayne Musabayana, and I'm head of communication at the African Union Commission. So the way we will conduct our briefing today is that each one of our panelists will be given 3 to 5 minutes to make their briefing. Some of them will have a bit longer, like Mr. Masiwa, who has the headline topic for today. And then after that, we will then go into the question and answer section. So it will not be very long because we have a number of speakers to address us today. So we would really ask that each one of us puts forward just one question so that we can accommodate as many colleagues as possible. Thereafter, we'll have the concluding remarks of 1 minute each from each one of our panelists, and then we'll bring our press briefing to an end. The way that you can ask your questions is to come through live on this Zoom platform or utilize the question and answer section, but you can also come through our WhatsApp number, and that is +251 94 550 2310. Let me repeat that number. It is +251 94 550 2310. So let's go right into it and invite Dr. John Nkengasong, who is the director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Dr. John, good morning, and you have the floor.
Good morning, Wayne, and greetings to everyone on the platform, especially the media. This is a special event that is focused on uniquely on vaccine distribution and the AVATT developments that have just occurred over the last couple of days. I will keep my comments brief. This is strictly focused on vaccine distribution, so you will not, as usually we do on Thursday, hear me discuss the epidemiologic situation. Rita and I just co-authored a paper today, an opinion piece in DEVEX, which says equal vaccine access isn't charity, it's our best tool. And I think that is, I would encourage all of you to look at that closely, because we argue there strongly that the best way for all of us to come out of this crisis quickly is to vaccinate quickly. So I'm really delighted today that we are here to give you a full update on where AVATT is going and some recent exciting new developments. So I'll keep my comments brief and wait for the question and answer session. So I'll yield the rest of my time back to you, Winnie, to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you very, very much, John. That was Dr. John Nkengasong, the director of the Africa CDC. For the next 10 minutes, we are going to have Mr. Strive Masiwa, who is the AU Special Envoy on COVID-19 and is also the coordinator of AVATT. Mr. Masiwa, you are the headline speaker for today, so you have the floor for now.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Well, good morning, everybody, wherever you are. I'm sorry about that. Just to recap, for the benefit of those joining us for the first time, the African Union scientists at the Africa Center for Disease Control recommended to the African heads of state at a special meeting in August 2020 that Africa would need to vaccinate 60% of its population. And this decision was made and communicated to all 55 member states. Later, sometime this year, the WHO issued a revised guideline at 70%. But Africa has always set out to achieve the 60%. And it was one of the first regions to officially communicate that target. For us to achieve that 70% target, it would mean vaccinating 900 million of our 1.3 billion population. As we all now know, there are two types of vaccine regimes. You can have a double dose regime or a single dose regime, as in the case of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. To achieve that would mean we would have needed to acquire 1.8 billion doses. As soon as that decision was made in August 2020, the then chair of the African Union, President Ramaphosa, who remains even to this day the president responsible for the COVID crisis, set up a special task force, which we call the Africa Vaccine Acquisition Task Force, with the specific purpose of coordinating this objective of vaccinating our people once vaccines became available. So it's very important to point out that we were working quite early, even before the vaccines became available. At the time, we recognized the efforts of the WHO and Gavi to create COVAX to help all countries access vaccines, because everybody understood that whenever the vaccines became available, the supply situation would be constrained. So we as members of the African Union, we are all members of COVAX. Now, President Ramaphosa set up a series of discussions with the donor community behind the COVAX initiative, primarily the rich nations, to try and establish the level of support they intended to give COVAX. Can you go back to the previous slide? The international community made it clear that their support for COVAX would only be sufficient for 50% of the targets set by Africa, which would mean that Africa would have to acquire the additional vaccines itself. So this is extremely important. From an African perspective, we wanted the international community to meet us halfway. And we said we would use our own money, our own resources to buy the additional vaccines to protect our people. We didn't just sit back and wait for the COVAX initiative. We made it clear we wanted to ensure that we were in a position to vaccinate all the people that the targets set by the leaders of the African nations. So let me go to my next slide. So I'm going to focus just on the acquisition of vaccines for that 50% target set by the African Union. We set up a vehicle, a special purpose vehicle, which we call the Africa Vaccine Acquisition Trust. And we asked Afri-Exim Bank, which is a bank, the import-export bank of the African member states. It is owned by the member states. They are shareholders in it. The largest being Egypt, Nigeria, and Egypt. And these countries quickly came together and provided additional resources for the Afri-Exim Bank to put up the money, because we knew that the suppliers were asking for upfront payments. What we didn't appreciate at the time was that by the time we approached the suppliers that had produced the early vaccines in November, December, they had already pre-sold most of the available vaccines to the rich nations. And in some instances, we were told that there would be, in fact, in almost all instances, without exception, we were told there would be no vaccines available for us to purchase in 2021. This created a major crisis for our member states because we had $2 billion in the kitty to buy vaccines on behalf of the member states, and yet we could not find vaccines to buy. The breakthrough came in December when President Ramaphosa made contact with Aspen, the South African pharmaceutical company, which had been given a contract by Johnson & Johnson to deliver vaccines, to produce, to cap and fill, as they call it, vaccine substance on behalf of Johnson & Johnson, but not for the African market. This was a major problem, but I'm not going to go into that at the moment. The bottom line, as I've said before, we entered into negotiations with Johnson & Johnson aimed at ensuring that all the vaccines that were to be produced at the Aspen facility in South Africa were to remain on the African continent. And as some of you know, and you have reported about this, the challenges we had in those negotiations, because the vaccine substance itself was coming from Europe, and Europe was demanding that those vaccines that are produced at Aspen come to Europe. I'm pleased to say that with President Ramaphosa in the lead, and negotiations which took place with the European President Ursula von der Leyen, it was eventually agreed that all the production at the Aspen facility would remain in Africa, and that is the position. This enabled us to enter into a contract with Johnson & Johnson to deliver 400 million doses, starting with deliveries beginning in August this year. I will show you a slide on that, going through to September next year. Can you take me to that slide? Here is a slide showing the delivery, the anticipated delivery of the Johnson & Johnson vaccines, the 400 million, which would start in August, going through to September 2022. At the same time, let me go back to my previous slide. Now, as many of you know, this morning, a statement was issued by the United States government and and the Africa Vaccine Trust and the Moderna company that we have reached an agreement with Moderna for them to deliver 50 million doses beginning December for a period of 3 months. This is a breakthrough for us because, as I said earlier, none of the suppliers had vaccines for us for this year. So other than what was coming out of the Aspen facility, we had no access to purchased vaccines. We had no access in any significant volume. I have sat in meetings with every single one of the suppliers. But this breakthrough is quite unique in the sense that in order to secure vaccines from Moderna this year, it required the United States government to do what we have been appealing for many months, to say the issue for us has not been the cost of vaccines, it's been the availability of immediate access to vaccines. So what the United States did following the visit, this has been a series of negotiations going on, and I really want to acknowledge the role of our leadership. President Ramaphosa and President Kenyatta worked extremely close on this. They made the request to President Biden to say, listen, give us an opportunity to go to the front of the queue. This is a time swap arrangement whereby the United States government basically stood aside for the next quarter so that we could access vaccines and purchase them ourselves. So these 50 million doses are being purchased by us, courtesy of the support of the United States government, which has been phenomenal in its support in the last few months, and that for them to comment on that themselves. But this specific deal allows us to get vaccines in December. We are preparing now. We'll get vaccines in December, in January, February, and early March. Let me show you on our slide. So if you look at this slide now, you can see that our numbers jump up quite dramatically in December, in January and February, as the vaccines from Moderna kick in. Now, we have also agreed with Moderna that they would deliver another 60 million doses with 20 million a month from April, May, and June. We've made it an option which will be triggered based on their performance in the month of December. And we have also other requirements, which I will not go into detail here. But this basically makes Moderna, the Moderna vaccine, only the second vaccine to be part of our own direct purchase. We are in a position to secure more vaccines from Moderna, but we want to see more concrete details emerge concerning their production in Africa, because our priority is production in Africa. We want production to be based in Africa because it is the center of our national health security. No country can accept what we've been put through without making the necessary changes. Can you take us to the next slide? So to just bring you on a status of our delivery situation, this is a list of the countries that are part of our vaccine acquisition pool. 39 African countries have been receiving deliveries from AVATT of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and 6 CARICOM countries. The other African countries that are not on the list are self-providing. The next slide, please. Here, this is an interesting picture that I wanted to share with you this morning. This, on the left-hand side, you see the state of the African vaccine acquisition order situation from the member states at the time the agreement was signed at the end of April. So at that time, only the countries that are in green were the only ones who had ordered and signed up. Afri-Exim Bank had already provided an advance purchase agreement and had paid Johnson & Johnson for the vaccines. But the member states had still not signed up. The risk was purely on the bank and its shareholders. However, as we look at the status in October, you can see we have a very healthy situation has emerged. The countries in gray have placed orders. They have got funding, in most instances from the World Bank, but there are just some technicalities that remain before they can begin to receive deliveries. So as you can see, only Algeria, Eritrea, Somalia, by the way, apologies to them, they are gray. They went gray a few days ago. Chad has now gone green as I speak. So it is really only Eritrea, Algeria, and I think it is Guinea, Equatorial Guinea, and even Burundi has gone gray. So Madagascar is green. So you can see that we are working together in an unprecedented way to meet our side of the bargain. Next slide, please. So the current status of our deliveries is as follows. This is all with single dose vaccines. The situation is, as you can see, we delivered 5.1 in August. That was to contract. We could only start delivering once the countries had all signed up. We're now at 17.2 million doses delivered to all the countries on that schedule, including the Caribbean countries, because we treat them as the 6th region of Africa. We will hit 35.2 million doses in the next 3 weeks, and we will have reached 50 million Johnson & Johnson in December, with the additional now 15 million Moderna coming in. So I will round up my last slide. Obviously, the countries purchase. So we have a very simple process. The countries, an advance payment was made to the suppliers because that is standard now in this industry. We then wait for the countries to place orders. They receive exactly the contract that was signed by AVATT. AVATT is not for profit. So there's total transparency. If you visit the ministers of finance of every one of those African countries, they have a copy of the actual contract for which they then accede to. They place their orders, and we do a monthly schedule. The countries, as we stand, know exactly what their plans are up to the end of November. All shipments go from the Aspen facility in the case of Johnson & Johnson. It'll be obviously different with Moderna because those are coming from the United States. But in the case of the Aspen facility, we are contracted with UNICEF. We pay UNICEF to receive the vaccines. They are sent to the UNICEF warehouses in Brussels for logistical reasons, because we don't have warehouses that can handle that sort of volume. And they then distribute to the member states. So everything is subject to placement of orders, confirmation of orders by member states, payment by member states. World Bank funding is available for 43 member states, which we already negotiated. And of course, the delivery commitments by the suppliers. And with that, really, I thank you for your attention. It is a great day for us. As you can see, on our side of the ledger, that is Africa buying the 50% that it required. We are very close to achieving that. In effect, if we activate the full Moderna contract, we will achieve 450 million people vaccinated by September next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. Strive Masiwa, who is the AU Special Envoy on COVID-19 and is also the coordinator of AVATT, giving us a very precise and up-to-date information on the status of vaccine acquisition and distribution across the continent. So thank you very much for that. We move on now and we call upon Ms. Rita Roy, and she is the Chief Executive Officer of the MasterCard Foundation. It's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Strive, and thank you, John, for such exemplary leadership to ensure vaccine access for Africa. And congratulations on the good news today. Clearly, this is a light for all of us to follow. So good morning and good afternoon to everyone. I'll be very brief. Some of you know that the MasterCard Foundation has been working across this continent for about 13 years to advance financial inclusion and education, and more recently, to address the issue of youth unemployment. COVID clearly threatened these efforts, as it does threaten the well-being of millions and millions of citizens. And we can only begin the economic recovery when all of us are safe, when all of us are vaccinated. And over the past year, we were so inspired by the tenacity, the commitment, and the actions of African leaders in the public and private sectors to mobilize, to create platforms, to purchase medical supplies, to purchase tests, to accelerate testing, to roll out vaccinations, and now to start to move plans into action for manufacturing vaccines on the continent. And so we got behind these efforts. In June of this year, the MasterCard Foundation announced Saving Lives and Livelihoods. This is a $1.3 billion initiative in partnership with the Africa CDC to advance 4 goals. First, to purchase vaccines for at least 50 million people. And as you've just seen from the slides that Strive showed, this number is now projected to be vaccines procurement for 57 million people coming through this particular initiative. Second is to really partner through the Africa CDC and with countless of organizations to scale and roll out vaccinations across the continent. Third, it's to build the workforce for vaccine manufacturing in Africa, which will address long-term regional health security. And fourth, and very importantly, to support and strengthen the institution of the Africa CDC as it oversees this historic initiative, as well as prepare for the next pandemic. You know, we're thrilled that in November, The first shipment of 15 million vaccines as part of the overall AVATT effort will start to hit the continent and will be utilized across this continent. And this will ensure a steady ramp up in the months to come to ensure that the continent meets its own targets for that 70% vaccination rate. At the end of the day, there can be no global health security without regional health security. And that's why we're so proud to be working so closely in partnership with the Africa CDC and with AVATT to ensure equity and rollout and delivery. And together, I'm sure we will succeed. Thank you.
Wayne.
Thank you very much. Yes, I hear someone calling my name.
It's me calling you.
All right, okay, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, let me extend once again our extraordinary appreciation for the support from the MasterCard Foundation. Let me go back. I want to clarify something from our slide, which is a very important announcement we are making today. As you can see, go to the delivery slide with the monthly schedules. Have you got it? I don't have it. Sorry about that. If you look at this slide, you will see that the deep blue on the slide, and we're happy to let anyone who wants this have it. You see the deep blue is where AVATT is making the purchases. The contributions from MasterCard, the only foundation to step forward and partner with Africa for this work, is shown in gray. What we are announcing today is that we have agreed with MasterCard that the shipments of November, the entire November shipment, will be paid for by them. And the African countries will get the November shipment, which will be approximately 17 million doses. In fact, just slightly over 17 million doses, which are going out now. The schedule has already gone out to the member states. They are not paying for the November shipment. It is courtesy of MasterCard. And MasterCard will continue to make some of the doses that they get. So every country gets the doses that is paid for, plus a bonus of free vaccines paid for by MasterCard. This is an extraordinary initiative. And over and above that, MasterCard has been working with the Africa CDC in an initiative which no one else has done, which is to actually help in the delivery of the vaccine. Because these are a lot of vaccines beginning to move now, but we need support on the ground to the member states. Training of personnel, buying of vehicles, setting up vaccination centers, and so forth. All this work has been going on behind the scenes with MasterCard support and the Africa CDC. It is the bigger part of the work. And I want to really express our deepest appreciation for this. And it is a very, very important component of what needs to happen. And I really want to call on other foundations around the world, other donors, and the corporate world to really step behind the local national delivery initiative behind vaccines. Otherwise, we will not succeed. Thank you very much once again, Rita. Let us go back. Has anybody found Dr. Songwei somewhere?
Yes, I've seen her. I've seen her. She's online. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on with our program and call in Her Excellency Jessie Lapen, the head of the US-AU mission in Addis Ababa.
Thanks very much. As really a listener as well as a contributor to today's discussion, I really primarily want to congratulate AVATT. I think what the Special Envoy has described, and having watched it in Addis up close for many months, is extraordinary. It is unprecedented and reflects an unbelievable amount of work and also collaboration. So both personally and on behalf of my government, I really extend congratulations. The United States is working with virtually everyone on this platform. We are committed to working with governments, private sector, and crucially, multilateral entities, particularly the AU, as we work and help to strengthen a diversified, resilient global supply chain, improve manufacturing capacities, and close the gap in vaccine availability and distribution. Strive has talked about the most recent announcement of Moderna, and I think what's particularly exciting is that the first 15 million doses will come out this before the end of this year. In addition to that announcement, at the same time, the president has announced additional donations, so the vaccines that were produced in the US for Americans that we are instead sharing. And so that's an additional 17 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. And that follows an earlier announced 50 million of shared doses. Also picking up on Strive's point about the need for manufacturing in Africa, where we share his commitment to that end and are very focused on helping the continent develop its own vaccine production capabilities. Last week, the U.S. Development Finance Corporation COO Dave Marchek was in South Africa. He met with BioVac, which now, in cooperation with Pfizer and BioNTech, is poised to fill and finish another 100 million doses of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for delivery in Africa. He also met with Aspen Pharmacare, which has been discussed. That engagement with Aspen follows an announcement of US financing alongside IFC and European partners, all of which is to booster and bolster Aspen's capacity to produce COVID-19 vaccines, but also other critical pharmaceutical products for the continent. Throughout this whole period, our US partnership with Africa CDC has really expanded and grown. We were with this extraordinary institution from the beginning, but now we are reorienting, re-energizing our relationship, which is really acknowledging Africa CDC's growth and capacity, as well as the context of a global pandemic. And so before the end of this year, we will sign a new Memorandum of Cooperation with Africa CDC because we recognize what a critical partner it is to advance global health goals, not just related to COVID-19, but for all of the full range of health needs. While I have this opportunity, I also want to acknowledge another really important development in the continent's health architecture and congratulate the signatories of the African Medicines Agency Treaty and the AU Commission, because next week, the African Medicines Agency will the treaty enters into force. And there will be another critically important African institution that is part of the broader architecture that will be crucial for strengthening the continent's health security. And US government and US private sector are very much looking forward to collaboration with AMA. So really congratulations to AVATT, particularly for the new donations, but also for operating and working in a new way and for really driving extraordinary communication and coordination. I don't think the scale of that can be understated. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was Ambassador Jessie Le Pen of the USAU mission in Addis Ababa. So now let's welcome Dr. Vera Songwei. And Dr. Songwei is the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission in Africa, which is based in Addis Ababa. And she is also a UN Under Secretary General. Dr. Songwei, you have the floor.
Thank you, Winnie. Listen, thanks. It's a really great pleasure to be here today and to witness this. I think, as Strive has said it all, three things we wanted to do. One is to really thank the Mastercard Foundation and Rita in particular for your engagement. You have been with us, I think, since this crisis started in March 2020. Looking for ways to support. I think there is no way better than this. To come behind this initiative, an African initiative that is not just asking for a handout, but that is saying we can afford it, put us online so we can buy it. And then, of course, to the United States government that has made it possible, because we all know that imposition of export bans has made it very difficult for vaccines to go out of a lot of territories. And I see Seth here, we're still trying to get vaccines out of India and other places. And so I think this is really an important leadership moment also for the United States to say that, yes, they can, move their queue in the line and give us more vaccines. So we want to, first of all, recognize that leadership. I think Africa took leadership by creating AVATT. The world took leadership by creating COVAX, but we need to lift the export ban so that COVAX can be as effective as I think it was expected to be. And again, we want to thank the large African countries that put their resources together. This is a little bit what innovative financing can do, and that's a little bit our role here is the larger African countries putting their resources together to come up with the $2.2 billion that Afri-Exim Bank was able to put forward to do this initial purchase. And I think more support for innovative financing mechanisms like this that allow Africa to take control as well of its buying cycle and ensure that its health security is in its hands is an important first step. The second step, of course, is production on the continent. And again, the Mastercard Foundation is supporting some of that. But we want to say that most important is that the private sector support to Africa's pharmaceutical industry must be market driven. If it's donor driven, we will end up where we started. So again, I think it's very, very important that any gracious support to this sector come as a market enhancing support and not as market destruction. But once again, more Africans will be vaccinated. Our numbers are still very low. Even with all these vaccines, we will not hit the 10% mark that we are expecting to hit by the end of the year. So we're hoping that more vaccines can be made available, not just to Africa, but also the whole world, so that as Rita says, and as we all say, if there's a few people that are not vaccinated or do not have access, all of us don't have access and we cannot recover. So thanks again, Rita. Thanks to the US government and to everybody that is taking the vaccines. Thank you too.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vera Songwei there, talking about a number of issues, including acquisition, financing, and manufacturing of vaccines on the continent. So thank you so much. We will move on now to Dr. Seth Barkley, who is from COVAX. You will notice that we are not calling on the representative of Afri-Exim Bank. Unfortunately, they're having some issues and are not able to join us. So let's move straight on to Dr. Seth Barkley. It's over to you.
Thank you so much. And are you controlling the slides or am I?
No, I think someone from Africa CDC is doing that on your behalf.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And first, I want to congratulate Strive and AVATT for the announcement today. It has been a very important partnership we have had and we'll continue to have working to do our part to make sure that Africa has the vaccines it needs, and also to make sure, as one thinks about expanding vaccine manufacturing on the continent. We already purchase vaccines from one manufacturer on the continent, but that we can be part of that process as the largest purchaser of vaccines in the world. So I'm just going to briefly tell you where we are in COVAX. If I could have the next slide, please. So To date, we've shipped, actually, the slide's a little out of date, 408.9 million doses globally, and about a third of those have gone to African countries. This is from the UNICEF COVAX implementation tracker. Every reporter can have visibility of this anytime they want, and it is updated multiple times a day. I want to point out a few numbers on this, which is important to understand as I show you where we are on delivery. So you've got 145 countries, you've got the doses that have been delivered, you've got transit, but all the way to the left, you have the doses allocated. These are the doses that have now shipping dates from manufacturers and have been allocated to countries. And those are the numbers that then over time will turn into deliveries. So this is the global picture. Now, if I can move to the next slide, please. This is looking at the supply forecast. These are release dates from manufacturers, and you can see that by the end of the year, we expect to have 470 million doses available for Africa. And then by the end of March, we will exceed the 900 million that Strive has said that is part of our task to do. That actually should be about 37% of the continent. There will be more doses coming during 2022. So if there are additional doses needed, we'd be happy to make those available. You can see here low and high because, of course, as we have seen, there have been delays from many of the manufacturers. And we therefore have to keep in mind that things may not go always so smoothly with vaccinations. And we need to be flexible because it may be in the future, there may be need for boosters or for different vaccines if we see resistance to some of the vaccines we have today. Next slide, please. So where are we today? So first of all, out of the 53 AU countries that have begun vaccination.
Is projecting it, can put it in the proper format, please. Just put the screen in the full screen so that we don't get to see, be distracted with all the other things we are seeing. Thank you. So,
can you guys still see or no?
We can see your screen. Please go ahead.
Okay, so if we can go to this slide. Okay. Whoever is showing the slides is showing it not in full screen format, but anyway, doesn't matter.
Sorry for the interruption. So you just go on the top of the screen, display settings, and you click that, display settings, and you click that, you see duplicate tab, display settings just on the top of the slide. Display settings in the middle, right? Click the drop-down icon, click the drop-down icon, yeah. Duplicate slide, you see that, great. Oh.
Do you want me to just go ahead and show the slides? Maybe that's more efficient. If that's okay?
That's okay, sir. I think it will be better from here.
Can you now see the full slides?
We don't see anything anymore. The slides disappeared.
Okay, sorry. And let's try it again.
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay. You see it now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Please carry on.
Let's just go with that.
Okay. Thank you very much. So out of the 53 AU countries that have begun vaccination, COVAX has delivered now to 52. Eritrea hasn't yet commenced its vaccination drive. So as of today, we've delivered 127.7 million doses to those 52 countries, and have delivered what we estimate to be is about 46% of the doses from all sources in Africa. What is important to keep in mind here is that these numbers are now going up. As Vera has said, there was a real slowdown in the middle of the year because of export bans. Those export bans, unfortunately, are still in place, and so we do hope that they will be released, which will move even more vaccines forward. But what has happened in the interim is that countries have donated doses, and so of this 128 million doses, over 55 million doses have been delivered. There is now also the scale up of the Pfizer initiative, which is coming from COVAX and from U.S. government donated doses. And there is also funding that is being provided to support countries' vaccine rollout related needs. For example, for the Pfizer doses, ultra cold chain infrastructure, but also strengthening other supply chains that can be used both for AVATT as well as COVAX doses or bilateral doses that countries have gotten. And I just want to finish by saying that 8.7% of the population in Africa has received at least one dose. This is way lower than the global average. It's unacceptable. The vaccine inequality has to be fixed. As Vera said, we need to make sure that we have everybody covered. And so the goal both of AVATT and COVAX is to try to accelerate vaccine access as much as possible so we can get to a place where we have coverage, particularly for the high-risk populations as soon as possible, but then the broader population as well. So that is the goal that we will be working on. We ask that all countries end their export restrictions now and make sure that their vaccines can flow as well as raw materials. And the donations, which are temporizing, this is not a strategy to deal with a pandemic, but have been incredibly helpful. We ask for all countries to release those as soon as possible with long enough shelf life and timelines for countries to prepare for doses. I just want to finish by saying how extraordinary the work on the ground has been. There has been very, very little vaccine wastage, and that's important. In fact, if we look at the vaccine wastage we have for our normal routine immunization, it actually is higher than we've seen for COVID-19 vaccines, which is a very good news. So just to finish, we will continue to support countries' needs. In 2021, our goal was to try to get as close as we can to cover the high risk groups, which is about 20%. That was a floor, not a ceiling. In 2022, we're here to support countries' needs to control disease and reopen society, and we'll do that by having a large portfolio of vaccines, pooling demand and complementing other mechanisms such as AVATT, advancing equitable access and fair allocation, and supporting the delivery. So with that, let me turn back to you, and thank you for including me.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. Seth Barkley from COVAX. All right, colleagues, we are running behind time, so I'm going to ask you, please, if you are indicating that you want to ask a question, to just ask the one question per person so that we can take as many questions as possible in the 5 or so 10 minutes, 5 minutes or so that we have left. All right, so let's get going and call upon Maggie Fick, who wants to come through live. Maggie, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, Maggie, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My question is for Mr. Masiwa. I heard what you said, that AVATT is in a position to secure more vaccines from Moderna, but you want more concrete details about their production in Africa because that's your ultimate priority for national health security. So my question is, have you had discussions with Moderna about the WHO Tech Transfer Hub and why they have been so far refusing to share their vaccine recipe? I understand that the Moderna doses you've secured are going to be in Africa soon, by the end of the year, so that's very positive. But the tech hub in South Africa run by the WHO is saying if we could have the recipe, we could ramp up, hundreds of doses very quickly. So do you want to address that question, sir? And what is your stance on Moderna's choice to start their own manufacturing in Africa as opposed to going the quicker route of sharing the recipe? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. My concern is the urgent delivery of vaccines. That is my number one objective. That's what I was appointed to do. I'm not here for anything else. So questions for WHO are for WHO and their initiatives. My interest is to make sure that those vaccines that are there now can be delivered. Seth pointed out the donation vaccines. We are as active in acquiring the vaccines that he mentioned from donors. We work together very closely on those donations. We actually do the allocation as AVATT. We've just completed the allocation of the US government donations that are being distributed by COVAX. We also did the distribution of the French government donation of 10 million doses. But really what I want from Moderna, they announced that they want to build a $500 million vaccine facility. It cannot be built overnight, but it's an important piece to the long-term health security of Africa. That's what I'm focused on.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go to our WhatsApp platform and take a question that's coming in from Cara Anna, and it's for Dr. John. So she says, at today's special briefing, could Dr. Nkengasong briefly comment on the United States announcement that countries with a shortage of vaccines are exempt from the new rules requiring vaccinations to travel?
Thank you, Cara, for that. Quite honestly, I've not seen that statement from the United States. I'm actually on travel, so I've not been very focused in my office tracking those announcements there. So allow me the time to look at that announcement carefully, and maybe Ambassador Le Pen, the US ambassador to the AU, have seen it, and is probably better placed to comment on that. So my apologies that I can't do it for now, because I would probably not be as accurate as I would like to be.
Ambassador Le Pen, do you have a comment on that?
Why don't we put the new rules related to travel in the chat? I think that's probably best rather than discuss or interpret. We'll do that.
All right. Okay, thank you. Hello to Sarah Jerving, who's with DEVEX. Sarah, please go ahead with your question and just indicate who it is directed at.
Thank you so much. For Mr. Masiwa, what is the price point per each Moderna dose? And did Africa Exim Bank provide the upfront funding for those doses as well, or how were the doses purchased? Thank you.
All the vaccines that we purchase are purchased by Africa. It's African countries buying the vaccines, with the exception of that component, which is a donation from MasterCard. It is our member states that are buying the vaccines. We did not ask the United States government for a donation. We asked them for the right to get to the front of the queue so we could buy. So we are buying the vaccines ourselves. The price point that we use for all our vaccines, and I want to stress this, is exactly the same as COVAX. We coordinate with COVAX, we talk to them, and we talk about the same price. So what they have published is the price. They're not a cent more.
All right, thank you. We have someone called Leon Lidigu. Leon, could you tell us your news agency and then ask your question? And I think this will be our last question for today.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Leon Lidigu from Daily Nation in Nairobi. Now, Mr. Masiyiwa, my question is about allocations to the African countries. Now, I'm wondering, will the methodology change from equity to equality the way we've seen COVAX change its strategy? And considering the fact that we have countries like Kenya that are months away from a general election and are really struggling to get to 10 million jabs of fully vaccinated people by December.
It gives me an opportunity for me to also clarify one or two things, if I may. We mentioned Dr. Songwei as the UNECA head of United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, but actually she is a member of the AVATT group of principles. It's a small team of us who work every single day. And we are part of the bigger AVATT committee set up by President Ramaphosa. But we work as the daily team on all the issues that arise. And I really want to acknowledge this extraordinary African leader. I just did not believe that someone could make that much amount of time for this work. And her passion has been unbelievable, as has Dr. John. He's a member of the AVATT group of principles, and Professor Orama of Afri-Exim Bank. So our allocation is very, very simple, and it's known by all the member states. It is based, they are buying the vaccines. So, you know, Kenya can have as many as Kenya wants because Kenya places orders. It is one of the biggest buyers of our vaccines and also one of the biggest advocates. So President Kenyatta is a member of the leadership group of heads of state that created this institutional framework. And his involvement is up there with President Ramaphosa, President Tshisekedi, President Macky Sall, who called me over the weekend to say, you know, where are we on these shipments? So the leaders are incredibly engaged. And we will, if in situations where they ask for more shipments, we run around. If they want more shipments, and we'll find them. That's what we do. We call around the other members of states. Some of the countries may not want their deliveries made immediately. We then ship them to other countries. So we're very flexible about this work. And at times I go to my friend Seth Barkley and ask him to do something. So we work closely together. This is a very collaborative effort. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm now just going to ask each of our speakers to give 1 minute or less, please, in terms of summarizing your key points. Let me start with Dr. Barkley has left, so let me start with Dr. Vera Songwei.
Thank you. Thanks, Tribe. I think this is a collective effort. The one message is many people are working really hard to get the vaccines onto the continent. I believe that the continent is also waiting to receive the vaccines. If you've not taken it and you have access to it, please do. And again, ensuring that we can produce the vaccines on the continent is clearly going to be our next big first step. We thank again the United Nations and the MasterCard Foundation for this donation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Roy from the MasterCard Foundation.
Just to say a word of thanks. None of this would happen without leadership. So I want to thank Strive. I want to thank Dr. John, Vera, President Orama, and many, many others who've been working so tirelessly on behalf of the African continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masiyiwa.
You know, President Orama would have been here today. He's actually meeting with the shareholders of Afri-Exim Bank. so that they can put up even more money to support vaccine acquisition. The largest purchase of vaccines has been done by AVATT. Our total order of vaccines is in excess of $3 billion. No donor has put up that amount. The United States is our single largest donor to the COVAX initiative. And I really want to thank President Biden in my own humble position. His people have been remarkable. And what has really been fantastic for us, particularly in the last few weeks, is they actually asked us, what do you want? How do we solve this problem? More often than not, the problem is a lot of people who want to help us don't stop to ask us how we would solve the problem, what our own ideas about solving the problem is. Please allow us to be full partners with you in solving these problems, because we're on the ground. And all we said was, listen, is there a way you could delay your own shipments and allow some of the suppliers to step forward? Because you have got these contracts in place which are limiting access to supplies. But just by doing that, look, 50 million doses, this is virtually the equivalent of everything that's been donated by all the other countries. It's not about dose sharing. Dose sharing is important. But if somebody pitches up and also wants to buy, let them buy. And then I want to really put one message for Dr. Seth Barkley, and he knows my position on this. Gavi, as the biggest buyer of vaccines, must buy from African manufacturers. It must help build the capacity through the buying capacity. That solves a lot of our problems. This problem will occur again and again. If institutions like Gavi and UNICEF don't use their buying capacity to create manufacturing capacity in Africa, it begins with the demand side, not the supply side. We cannot build factories and not have the orders from the biggest buyers. We need to see that happen and happen now. We cannot export jobs to India. I'm very sorry. We have 6 million jobs in India. And what happened when we needed vaccines? We couldn't get them. So what we need is to see our own manufacturing capacity. Aspen, BioVac, Dakar Institute, and many factories in Africa that could produce vaccines. So let's fix that. And that's the message today for Gavi, WHO, and UNICEF. We know what happened. Those who had manufacturing capacities are the ones that got vaccines. That's the problem we fix. It should not happen again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That was Mr. Masiwa. Let me now bring in Ambassador Lapen for your 1-minute brief.
Thanks so much. I wanted to just underscore, I really appreciated Dr. Songwei's frame on the moment of leadership. And I think that's been crucial. It's visible today. It's individual leadership from heads of state, but also many others, including all of the AVATT principles. But what I would say has accompanied that extraordinary leadership is also the institutional work, the building up of AVATT as an institution, and the institutional growth and development of Africa CDC. Thank you.
All right, and finally, Dr. John, your summary headline points.
Thank you, and let me, it's difficult to summarize after all the wise women and men on the platform have already captured that, but let me conclude on the power of partnership that I've personally enjoyed. Partnership with UNICA, I think Strive said it all. I think the commitment that we all have supported each other during the AVATT principles called almost on basis has been extraordinary, remarkable. That is really leadership with commitment. So thank you, Vera, for being there all the time. Thank you, Prof. Obama, who is not here today with us. And thank you, of course, Strive for leading the AVATT group together. Strive, we talked about partnership that listens to our needs. I think if anyone who has exemplified that, it is truly, in addition to the USG, the MasterCard Foundation. Every 2 weeks we meet to discuss our program, the joint program, the 1.3 billion. We co-create that program. And I think that is the kind of respectful, action-oriented partnership that our new public health order is asking for. A new public health order that says, yes, partnership, but the partners in the partnerships must actually listen to each other and co-create the actions there. So thank you, Rita, for what MasterCard Foundation is doing. And of course, the USG leadership role in global health has always been determinant, whether in the fight against HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis, or malaria on the continent. And this time around, we hope and continue to remain very pleased that the US is taking a very active role and a leadership role in making sure that vaccines are accessible to the continent. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it remains for me to thank all our panelists. And those were Dr. Seth Barkley from COVAX, Dr. Vera Songwei from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Her Excellency Jessie LaPen from the USAU Mission, Ms. Rita Roy from the MasterCard Foundation, Mr. Strive Masiwa from the Special Envoy of the AU on COVID-19 and coordinator of AVATT, as well as Dr. John Nkengasong, the director of the Africa CDC. And thank you very much to colleagues, journalists for being with us. We'll meet again on Thursday for our usual press briefing at 12 noon East African time. But from me, Wayne Musabayana, bye-bye.
To leave.